All right, so I seen this clip of Bill Ackman on Instagram recently. I thought I'd make a video about it because this is one of the most important concepts to understand when it comes to investing. So I'll play it and then I'll talk about it.
People tend to get excited about investments when stocks are going up, and they get depressed when they're going down. And I think that's just inherently human. You have to reverse that. You have to get excited when things get cheaper, and you got to get concerned when things get more expensive.
All right, so that was the clip, and this is just, the Warren Buffett's quote, also one of the comments here, be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy, and that's just another way of putting it. And this is one of the most important, if not the most important concepts when it comes to investing, because when things are going up, and you're not invested, it's very hard to resist the urge to FOMO. And when things are going down, well, the exact opposite is true. You get this fear that, oh my God, everything's going to collapse and you're going to lose everything. But the reality is that the mentality should be the exact opposite. The exact opposite. That's why I've said recently, when it comes to investing, my strategy right now is pretty conservative. Like pretty conservative. In fact, for the last few years or so, I've held literally zero bonds up until probably a couple months, 3 months ago. And the reason for that is, number one, bond yields were extremely low for up until a year ago or so. And number two, well, stocks there was no shortage of good deals. Now, that's not necessarily true. I think there's still some good deals out there, but my guess is maybe 20% of the market, I think, is a buy right now. Just that's probably a rough estimate. Obviously, it would be a little bit different, but if you look at the S&P, of the Mag 7, just take that as an example. I'd say, Nvidia's very, very expensive. Tesla's still very expensive, even though it's down a lot. Microsoft is very expensive. You look at Apple, I think that they're a little bit expensive. Amazon, I don't think is crazy expensive. Google, probably a little bit overvalued. So, you look at the top stocks, I don't think that there's one of them that I would be like, yeah, I really want to buy it right now. So again, the market is clearly overvalued. No, again, I still think that there's some deals out there, and I've been over a lot of those. But that is the whole point here. Again, getting back to the main point, I think that if you just do the opposite of what the average person is doing, you're going to do really good. Because what are most people doing right now? Most people are FOMOing in a lot of these high-flying tech stocks. That is a huge problem. And again, there's people in the reverse that I think take it too far, that pretend like the sky is falling because, oh my God, there's the Mag 7 is 20% of the S&P or whatever the number is. And for starters, in any aspect of life, there is the 80-20 rule, right? In that the vast majority of your returns are going to come from an extremely small. If you take a company of 100 salespeople, well, the top 10 probably are going to make about half the sales, right? So the idea that the market is way overvalued just because these top stocks are whatever percentage, I think it's overstated. I don't think it's necessarily completely wrong, because they're definitely right to a degree, but I don't think it's as bad as what people make it out to be. And another aspect of this too is if you pay really close attention to this stuff and other people know it, another very good guide is the people that aren't into it at all. And I'll give an example, and the example is in the last crypto or Bitcoin bull run, early on, I heard nothing about it. Like, I remember telling people about it, but again, people were never asking. And then when it was close to the all-time highs or at the all-time highs, I don't even know that many people, but I had maybe 5 to 10 people ask about it. Just out of the blue. I didn't even bring it up. Not one of the times I even brought it up. And looking back on it, that was a contrarian indicator, because I remember that was all when it was very close to its all-time high or at its all-time high. And again, one of the many reasons I'm still very bullish on Bitcoin is that I haven't had one person bring it up so far this time around. So that's another reason that I'm very bullish. But again, that's besides the point. The whole idea of this, I think another aspect that you can break it down from is when you're making decisions in life, the less emotional you are, the better your decision making will be. Right? I can't stress how important that is, so I'll repeat it. The less emotional you are when making decisions, the better the decisions are going to be. So when it comes to investing, that is extremely important, because when you're looking at a company, if its earnings are X, its value, everything is steady, and the price goes down 50%, you should be double as excited to get into that, whatever it is, stock, real estate, doesn't matter, crypto, doesn't matter. The problem is your average person gets emotional. And I mean, personally, I wouldn't say it doesn't happen with me, but I've learned this, and this is one of the big lessons that I figured out very early on in the process, that and this is probably my first piece of advice to average people when they ask about investing in anything, is if you're going to be overly emotional, don't even bother. Don't even bother if you're overly emotional. And most people are. That's why I'm usually pretty skeptical about talking with people about that stuff. Because, again, if you can't handle a 50% drawdown, then it's not worth it. Because, number one, it just shows you really don't understand the game. Because if you own an asset and it goes down 50%, but nothing fundamental changes, and you're all bummed out about it, yeah, it sucks in the short term. I'll admit that, and that's really the only thing that bothers me. But if you're all bummed out, then again, you just don't understand. So you cannot be overly emotional, right? Do not be overly emotional. And this is I mean, if you want to get into other topics altogether, this is one of the main reasons why I think that society is so stagnant nowadays, and why a lot of the problems we face exist, because all these decisions that we're making as a society are made purely from emotion. Right? When you look at inflation, when you look at any political issue, the majority of people are making their decisions from an emotional perspective, not from a fact-based, well-thought-out perspective. It's just all emotion. And they're only concerned about this one little aspect. Right? And again, this is economics 101, in that you have to look at the big picture. You cannot be hyper fixated on this one tiny little thing. Like, if you want to give an example, right? It's rent control, right? The average person, again, they hear, oh my God, the cost of housing is through the roof. We need to impose rent control because the prices will never go up. But again, all they're concerned about is that they're hyper fixated on how do we get some quick fix. Again, yeah, it'll work in the short term, but in the long term, it just exacerbates the problem, right? And I shouldn't even have to explain it. I'm not going to explain it, because if I have to explain to you why rent control doesn't work, this isn't for you. And that's the same thing when it comes to investing, right? Stocks go down. And again, I'm not saying that you should never be worried, because if something fundamental changes about a stock going down significantly that you own, like if something genuinely fundamental changes, then yeah, I think that's going to be a cause for concern. But if you're smart about what you buy into in the first place, usually you don't end up in a lot of those scenarios. So that's the key in my mind, is it's not that you just blindly invest and, oh my God, the market's down, I don't have to worry, because I don't have to worry. And, Warren Buffett said so, Bill Ackman said so. That's not necessarily the case. The case is you want to be very smart about what you invest in the first place, right? This is I mean, investing 101. It's you buy good companies for a good valuation. You don't just buy good companies because there's a lot of good companies that are overvalued, right? And then there's a lot of, and on the flip side, there's a lot of companies that are super cheap, but they're not good companies. So the key is buy good companies for a good valuation. Now again, the big question there is, what's a good company? Now that is just to some degree subjective, but I think it's there's no perfect science. But again, you want companies that have a good track record of profitability, use of capital, not using excess amounts of debt or equity to fund their pet projects, good management, right? The list goes on. And then they have good future prospects. They're in an industry that's projected to grow. They're projected to grow, right? Not that complicated. Now again, if you want to beat the market, okay, that does bring some form of complexity. But at the end of the day, it's not that complicated. And again, valuation, that's very easy to figure out because the numbers are obvious. Number one, where is it historically traded? Number two, where does the industry historically trade? And those numbers are very easy to figure out and a lot easier to understand. So anyway, if you want to sum it up here, is you need to learn to not be emotional in your decision making. And this is one of the many problems of public schools and of universities nowadays is they don't teach people to think critically. They teach people to think emotionally. And that's why so many people, there's so few really good investors, because people are taught to think emotionally in every other aspect of their life, and therefore it carries over to their investing. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more.